morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm your moderator, Marita Dubitsky. My husband, Doug, and I are parents of Sydney, class of 20, and Shelby, class of 22. We live in Chaplin, Connecticut. Along with John and Heather Leslie, we are co-chairs of the Pomfret Parent Executive Council, PPEC, which is sponsoring this morning's event. The PPC is the voice of Pomfret parents everywhere. Our mission is threefold. 1, to better connect the parent community with school leadership. 2, to promote robust relationships within the parent community. And 3, to welcome new families to the Hilltop. This morning's Tim Talk is the latest in a series of informal town hall style webinars for parents, and the format is pretty simple. First, Tim is going to kick things off with a few updates related to Pomfret's reopening plan this fall. And then he's going to open the floor up to your questions. Many questions were submitted in advance of this meeting, and we will get to those first. Additionally, you can submit a question anytime using the Q&A box on your screen. I'll be able to see your typed questions, and we'll get to as many of them as I can. If you experience a tech issue during this town hall and need help troubleshooting the problem, please email techsupport@pomfret.org with your name, cell phone number, and a brief description of the issue, and a member of our support team will call you back right away. And so with that, I will turn things over to Tim. Thanks for doing this, Tim.
Thank you, Marita, and thank you all parents for joining us. This is our second webinar, or second Tim Talk of the morning. We had a good crowd of international parents on earlier this morning and got some great questions. I see that there are still people joining the webinar, and so I'm going to get started and hope that they won't miss too much. We have been working at this issue on COVID planning and reopening, obviously, for some time now. It's my hope that you all received and had a chance to peruse the roadmap to reopening that Gary Dow and Jordan Campaign in the communications office produced that was sent out on Saturday. Certainly that document contained a lot of the information that you need to know. But I acknowledge that here we are on June 25th, knowing much more than we did even just a few weeks ago, and not knowing still some number of specifics about the opening that will become more and more clear over the next month or so. We have been in scenario planning mode for about 7 weeks with the Open Pomfret Task Force and the working groups that support that task force. Our guiding principles all along have been quite clear. The safety and health and well-being of all members of the Pomfret community is our chief driver, guiding all of our decision makings. Secondly, we're committed to providing a product that we think is incredibly strong, that empowers student success in both the academic and co-curricular realms of our school. We are committed to providing continuity, both for you as families and for your children who are looking for stability during a time of great upheaval. And then we're trying to be thoughtfully courageous, balancing the need to evaluate risk during a time of uncertainty, knowing what those risks are and how to mitigate them as best as we can. We have been consulting far and wide with experts on the medical side, on the educational side. We've spoken with epidemiologists. We're talking with consultants. I've been in deep conversations with fellow heads of schools and with our parent organizations, the Connecticut Association of Independent Schools, most particularly the Association of Boarding Schools, the National Association of Independent Schools, to sort of, as best as we can, get all of the facts as they are emerging. And I say emerging because fact patterns continue to change. And if you watch the news on a regular basis, you are hyper aware of that. But everything that we are seeing to this point is telling us that we can open campus in the fall. And our plan right now, as you read in the roadmap to reopening, is to do just that. We will offer a high quality academic and co-curricular experience. We will do so thoughtfully and prudently, recognizing that, that there is some risk that we're willing to take as we bring students and faculty back to campus. You've seen at least a broad modification of our fall calendar that would allow students to quarantine on campus. This is designed primarily for international students, but with the announcement yesterday that Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey are requiring 2-week quarantines for people coming into the state from 9 other states in the country, that quarantine option will be made available to domestic students as well. Our academic calendar looks largely similar in the opening days. We will open classes, we'll start classes on Friday the 11th of September after doing a 4 or a 5-day rollout or welcoming back of students in waves. The big change you saw from the roadmap in terms of calendar surrounds what happens after Thanksgiving or at Thanksgiving break. And our plan at this time is to go on Thanksgiving break on Saturday the 21st, or after classes on Friday the 20th of November. And then resuming our academic program on December 1st, though in distance learning mode. And we're right in line with what a majority of colleges and universities and boarding schools are doing on that front in terms of taking the time between Thanksgiving break and the winter holidays as a distance learning opportunity. Students will return a little bit later in January than originally planned. This will allow us to do another round of testing for all of our students as they return from winter break. You'll hear more as we talk and we get into the Q&A session about our health and safety protocols. We are working very closely with the guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and then recommendations from the state health agencies in terms of specific steps we will take to ensure the sanitary conditions on the campus, to ensure that we have space to quarantine and isolate students in the event that we do have cases of COVID that present themselves on campus. And we are working on the more detailed plans of what social distancing will look like at Pomfret in the fall. All of the planning that we've been doing led up to the release of the roadmap to reopening that was released on Saturday. But as I said in my letter there that accompanied that roadmap, we know that there are many, many more questions that still don't have answers, and that not that we haven't been pursuing answers to the questions, but that simply haven't been answered yet, questions that haven't been answered yet. And it's our intention over the next month or so to dig more deeply, to press even harder at our parent organizations and state agencies to get clarity around some of the unanswered questions, so that we can come back to you at the sort of the end of July with a much clearer sense of exactly what the fall will look like in terms of practices and protocols, procedures for reentry, et cetera. So we know now that there are many questions that you have. We will try our best over the next 45 minutes or so to get answers to those many questions, though we may have to acknowledge in time or at this time that there are questions that we can't provide firm answers to yet. Our academic program is coming increasingly into focus. As you read in the roadmap, we will offer in-person classes and learning opportunities on campus beginning on September 11th. We will also offer to those students who are unable to get to campus, either for travel reasons or for health reasons, we will offer a parallel academic program, and I will have Gwyneth Connell, our director of the Grauer Institute, a little bit later. I'll have her unpack that in a little bit more detail. Our distance learning program that we created this spring will be the foundation of, but not the sort of a complete recapture of that will not be what our distance learning program looks like in the fall. We will evolve that program so that it is more interactive with more opportunities to engage directly in learning experiences with both students and teachers. We are working on, right now, the biggest unanswered question we have pertains to athletics and competitive athletics. Our plan, again, reiterating, I hope the redundancy is not overwhelming to you, but our plan right now is to launch a competitive athletic program this fall. We don't know yet what that is going to look like. We don't know what other schools are going to be doing. We don't know if we're going to have a judgment handed to us or a decision handed to us by state health agencies or by the governor. We've been hoping to get some more guidance and a clearer picture from colleges and universities, but even that remains very fuzzy at this time. Bowdoin College did just announce that they will not have intercollegiate athletics either this fall or this coming winter. And if that's an indicator of what's coming to small colleges, that may shape the decision-making in independent schools as well. But as of right now, our plan is to likely have a modified version of our athletic program, maybe a truncated season. And we do have to get answers from state health authorities about how we safely engage in these activities. We're going to be practicing social distancing in our classrooms with masks on, but it's very, very difficult to practice social distancing on a football field or a soccer field or a volleyball court. And it's not possible to wear masks when you're engaging in aerobic activities like that. And so we don't have 100% clarity, and we're waiting for more guidance on that. The dates for the fall, I think you've seen in preliminary fashion. As of right now, it would seem unlikely that we'll have an on-campus fall family weekend. We are considering the possibility of moving family weekend to the spring, when we hope there may either be more freedom to travel, fewer restrictions in terms of gathering sizes, and then potentially, perhaps optimistically, we'll have in place either some treatments or potentially even a vaccine that would allow for gatherings of that size. You read, I hope, the section of the roadmap pertaining to refunds if your child is not able to be here on campus. I will have Mr. Griffin, Ed Griffin, who is our CFO, tackle that question as it comes up in the Q&A. And I hope that will provide some clarity to you. We are putting a stake in the ground by being upfront about some tuition refunding, our tuition refund policy. A good number of our peer schools are not committing to that type of policy and won't make any decisions until 13 months from now, until the end of the next calendar and fiscal year. So I'm pleased that we're able to be upfront about that policy right away. So we still have a great deal of planning to do. The roadmap to reopening is a great launching pad for us as we move into the minutiae, really move into the weeds of how we're going to make this all happen. What bringing students back to campus will look like, what type of training we have to do for our faculty and our students and our families about our new practices and policies. But it is with a genuine degree of excitement that, that we're looking forward to welcoming you and your children back to campus in just a few short months. So I'm going to stop there because I know there are a lot of questions that have been pre-submitted and that there may also be a good number of questions that are emerging during the course of this talk. So I'm going to pause now. I'm going to toss it back to Marita. I want to thank Marita again for being here and serving as our moderator. I want to thank my team who is in the background and who will be called on to answer questions that they are more suited to than I. So I'll stop now.
Great, thanks, Tim. I thought that the Saturday's report was very well done, and it really is remarkable how much thinking and planning has already gone into making the next school year a success. I know personally that the report answered a lot of questions, but obviously more information that we get, more questions we have. So before we start into the active live Q&A, I like to start with some of the questions that we've already received. And obviously, you already touched upon, many of the areas that people would like to hear more about. So we're going to start about testing. And you kind of already talked about it, but is there anything else that you would like to add? Can you briefly prescribe Pomfret's testing protocols for domestic students returning to campus?
So I'm going to quickly introduce it, and then I'm going to invite Brenda Bullied, who's our Director of Facilities and who has been co-chairing with Don Gibbs the Health, Safety, and Social Distancing Working Group of of our task force. What I will say is that we are, I think we plan either later this week or at some point next week, planning to formalize a relationship with a testing company to outsource much of our testing, the bulk testing. But in terms of the protocols, Brenda, you want to walk through where our thinking is at this point?
Absolutely, Tim. Right now, the partnership that we're looking for and planning on participating in combines both on-campus testing and at-home testing. So they are developing an at-home test kit that can be sent to your residents and sent back into their labs so that you will have a better experience and not have to worry about quarantining when you get back on campus. So those are two options, once again, on campus and tests sent to your homes. In addition to that, we'll be testing a certain percentage of the population ongoing weekly through the duration of the fall term, and we will have local testing facilities available for that. I think that covers it right now, Tim.
Yeah, so we're really hoping that to the best of our ability and the best of your ability, that we can have students tested before they return to campus. That would certainly make, it doesn't create an absolute bubble, but it certainly, it strengthens the bubble around the campus a little bit if we know people are coming back with negative tests. And certainly if students are positive, then we would ask them to stay home and stay quarantined until they're asymptomatic and done with the illness, at least we hope, before returning to campus.
Great. So I assume that there will be more guidance whether the school will prefer students to be taking the test at home or waiting till they come to school.
One of the great benefits of working with this, the company that we think quite certain that we're going to be going with, is that they will ship the tests. Everyone will have the same tests, so we can use the same baseline. They will they'll ship the testing directly to the individual's home, and then it's just a question of having that test submitted. The results come back in 24 to 48 hours, and we'd all then have a similar baseline and could use the same database for all students.
Okay. The next question is about quarantine, and is the school planning a quarantine for students upon arrival?
So right now, all international students, anyone coming into the United States from another country, from certain countries, let me rephrase that, have to quarantine for 2 weeks. And we are at this point in time offering on-campus quarantining for international students who are coming from countries where there's a required quarantine according to the Centers for Disease Control. Now, with Connecticut and New York and New Jersey's announcement yesterday that they are requiring a 2-week quarantine for people coming into those 3 states from hotspots in the country, we will continue to monitor that and similarly offer quarantining, on-campus quarantining beginning on August 24th for students who are coming, for example, from Florida or from the other states where there are identified hotspots. We will provide an on-campus 2-week quarantine at that point in time. The hope too is that with the early quarantining, we would hope that students would come back with the tests complete, or if not, we would be able to complete tests within 48 to 72 hours on campus. And the nature of quarantining would be different if a student obviously has a negative test than if they have a positive test. So yes, we are offering quarantine for students, international students who have a required quarantine, or students who are coming from a state where Connecticut is requiring a quarantine.
All right. And then there is a related question to that is there a fee associated with the 2-week arrival quarantine?
No fee. It's the service that the school is offering. In addition to keeping our dorms open for the entire school year, we recognize that this is an additional burden on our faculty throughout the course of the year. They're willing to do this because that's what we have to do to keep our students safe. So there's no additional fee.
Okay, great. Will there be a vacant dorm space for quarantining students who get sick once the school year starts?
Sure. And Brenda, I'm going to invite you back on to talk about how we're doing that. It's a complicated process for boarding schools. We are in conversation with the state health agencies because if we have these overflow spaces, by statute, they're supposed to meet all of these specific criteria, both from a health perspective and a facilities perspective. But those statutes were written without a pandemic in mind. And so we're hopeful that the state is going to rule in our favor. And Brenda, you could talk a little bit about the facilities that we know that we have available right now, and also perhaps explain the difference between isolation and quarantine.
Sure. So first and foremost, students that present with a positive case that need medical attention, they will be housed in the health center. And that is part of the surge plan that Tim is mentioning right now. In addition to that, we may have students present with a positive case that are asymptomatic and need an absolute different level of care. We have 2 houses identified on campus where we will have beds set up and bathrooms available with supervision that they can safely be in and participate in classes remotely as needed. And from that point on, we'll be continually developing plans associated with any kind of cases that happen. So I'm confident that we can house students as necessary. Tim, is there anything else you want me to address with that in terms of isolation and quarantine?
Just helping people understand that the isolation is for positive symptomatic cases.
Yeah.
And then quarantine is for suspected cases or asymptomatic cases.
Correct. I think quarantine, we may have students in quarantine that are under a watch, more or less.
Contact tracing perhaps as well.
Yeah.
So
All
if contact tracing identifies a group of students who may have been exposed to someone who is positive, they would be in quarantine, but they wouldn't have to be put into a specific separate facility.
Correct.
They could be in their dorm.
All right, great. Thank you, Brenda. We're going to move on to health and safety. Can you tell me about your health and safety protocols? How will you keep my students safe on campus?
Well, that's a big old question, Brenda. Don't go away for too long. So again, Brenda has been sharing with Don the working group on health and safety. Between now and the end of July, we will be developing in full our practices around sanitizing the campus, establishing the policies around PPE, wearing of face masks, social distancing, that will do as much as we can from a policy standpoint for ensuring safety. And Brenda, what am I missing in terms of what we'll be developing?
We're looking at different plans for dorms versus public spaces like classrooms. We're implementing policies regarding masks and social distancing, as well as density. So our classrooms will have less chairs in them. That's an example. Our dining hall will look different. We're working on developing maybe an alternate dining location so we can spread out the number of students that will be served in any singular area. And as you mentioned, Tim, just general disinfecting and cleaning is going to be more frequent.
It's what's important here is that all of the policies that we put into place are only as good as the people in the community's willingness to abide by them. We recognize that in a population of 350 teenagers, that the wearing of masks as they socialize, the inability for them, or the prohibition on hugging, for example, which will be something we say, you just can't hug. Well, they're teenagers. That's probably going to happen. So we have to, and we will be developing training protocols and education for our students and our faculty and staff around what these measures are and why they're important. It takes one quick look at the news to see where there are hotspots in the country and why there are hotspots across the country, to see that it's been the rapid opening and people's disregard for simple safety protocols that is leading to these spikes in cases across the country. And one of the reasons things have been so good in Connecticut, and particularly Northeast Connecticut, is that people are really good about wearing masks. People are really good about keeping social distance. We've been very prudent in terms of the pace of opening up the economy here. But as we've slowly opened the economy, even in Windham County, and Pomfret is in Windham County, it's the safest county in the state of Connecticut and one of the safest counties in New England in terms of diagnoses. But as things open up, if people are too casual and don't abide by the mandates or the encouragements, then we will see cases rise. So Brenda, do you have something else to add there?
No, I think you've covered it.
Great.
All right, I'm hoping that the fact that we get to go back to school and kids get to be with their friends and have more of the normal experience will make them obey the rules and regulations, and because nobody wants to have the school year cut short and have to go home early. Obviously, as we know from the report, and we know not everybody in our Pomfret community lives and stays in Pomfret. So will there be separate protocols for day students and teachers who don't live on campus?
So we will be monitoring our all of our students and all of our employees. Day students will be asking them and their families to monitor their health conditions in the same way that we'll be monitoring health conditions here. They will be doing testing in the same way that our boarding students will be doing testing. so that we won't draw a distinction. It's as much as we would like to think we could create a bubble here on campus, we can't. Even if we could house all of our students, we wouldn't be able to house all of our faculty. We wouldn't be able to preclude vendors and outside contractors from coming to campus. And so the thought is that we want to be as careful as we can, as prudent as we can, with our day students and with our day faculty. We're going to ask them and their families to closely monitor health. We will be doing regular testing. Whether we're doing temperature checks or not, I think is up in the air at this point, given where the national feeling on the efficacy of temperature checks are. But we'll be holding them to the same standards as everyone else. We'll be asking families, day student families, for example, not to expose their children to opportunities for contamination as much as they can, so that day students, like boarding students, have fewer opportunities for exposure, and therefore keeping the community safe. And so it's trying to help students and families understand that this isn't just about them. This is about being in a community, what it means to live in a community, what it means to be connected to a community and committed to the idea of community. So, so those are practices and policies for day students will mirror very closely what they are for boarders.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to academics and campus life questions. You already talked about the fall calendar. You know, somebody asked, has the fall calendar changed? Is there anything else you want to add to that? So
the only, I've spoken about the break that will happen from campus, but between Thanksgiving and the beginning of January. I've mentioned that family weekend is up in the air. What we haven't spoken about specifically, and when we're still working on policies around, are visits to campus. If you're a returning parent, I hope you know that we love having parents here all the time. If you're a new parent, you should know that we love having parents come and visit. This, however, is an uncertain time. Wes Jenkins, who's the Dean of Students, is on the call. Wes, you want to talk a little bit about where our thinking is with respect to outside visitors and families coming to campus?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at that, it's really going to be taken on a case by case, as much as we totally understand that people want to come visit campus. We also are trying to put the priority of the health and safety of the campus at the forefront of any decision we make. So I've already saw some questions too regarding, going home on weekends and various traveling engagements. And I think we're going to be looking at each of those individually and really assessing where students are going, where parents are coming from. And really, we're advising as many students as we can to really try to remain on campus. And my office is looking at, in particular, developing ways to engage the student body on campus as much as possible to mitigate kind of those risks. So still a lot of planning to do, but it's definitely on the forefront of the dean's office. And we'll have more suggestions forthcoming as the month rolls on.
Certainly, if there are unique and extraordinary circumstances, a death in the family, for example, we're not going to prevent students from leaving campus for that. But we want to be mindful of those activities that we would say are more optional in nature. And if they are optional in nature, what is the exposure risk for people going off campus? What is the exposure risk for leaving campus and engaging with other people about whom you don't know much? You don't know their exposure. The whole nature of asymptomatic transmission is the real bug in this virus. Excuse the pun. It's the real issue, so we want to do everything we can to minimize the risk of exposure to members of our community. And so we're still in the process of evaluating what those policies will look like. And that's what all boarding schools are doing right now.
Right, and that probably kind of answers the next question: that are the long weekends and breaks going to exist at all in the fall?
And those are the questions that we're still wrestling with, right?
Right.
If you have a 4-day weekend and 70% of your campus students leave campus to go off to 50 different locations, what are the issues with that? What are the concerns that we as a community have with that? We're probably not going to have a 2-week quarantine for everyone who leaves campus after a big weekend, just because there are so many practical and logistical hurdles to something like that. So we're debating the balance between the need for a break with the health and safety of the community. And so we, like all other schools and colleges, are wrestling with these topics right now as we try to finalize calendar plans.
Right. And again, I would think that the students would be just happy to, even if there was a couple of days off, they would be just happy to stay at school and be able to spend some time with their friends and on campus.
We hope so. We hope
Yes.
so. We hope that the joy of being back lasts long
Yes.
to get them to a vacation. That's
right. Can you describe what on-campus learning will look like coming September?
Sure, I can, but Gwyneth Connell can much better than I can. Gwyneth has been the chair of the Academics and Programming Working Group of our POMPR Task Force. So I'm going to punt that great question over to Gwyneth.
Great, thanks, Tim. So I'm actually really excited about the ways that we're going to reimagine teaching and learning for the fall. A sizable cohort, about 25 of our teachers, are going to engage in a week-long training later on this summer in something called Agile course design. And what drew me to this particular professional development was a webinar I attended that was organized by the same organization that talked about teaching and learning in the context of what they called elastic proximity. So this is the idea that as long as teachers know what their learning goals are for students and how they want kids to get there can happen in a lot of different ways. And so what we know is that some kids are going to be here and some kids are not. And that even for the kids who are here, we may not be able to accommodate a regular sized Pomfret class in a regular sized Pomfret classroom. Even after all of this is over, for us to think really intentionally as teachers about what are we trying to get kids to know and be able to do, and who needs to be near whom and for how long in order for that to happen. So by way of an example, I think about when I was teaching US history for many years, we did a research paper every year. And we would chip away at that research paper in class and as homework over the course of about 2 to 3 weeks. Was that the best way to approach a research project, 50 minutes at a time in a room full of 15 people? Probably not, but that's the time and space that we had, so that's how we did it. But what if instead we could say, I want to teach kids how to engage in the research process. I don't need all 15 of you here. I need to have writing. I mean, from my viewpoint, that would be a fantastic project to do during that 2.5-week distance learning time in December. Because what I really need is a 10-minute check-in every couple of days, one-on-one with each kid, to coach them on their process, give them some guidance for where they should be moving next in their research. They don't all need to be in the same room to be doing independent research projects. So when I think about what our academic program is going to look like in the fall, it's going to look like a much more intentional match between the learning goals and the way that we use time and space to achieve those goals. And hopefully it'll be in a way that'll last long after COVID is over. So that's what made me really excited about this as a way to think about curriculum design. The catalyst is COVID, but this is a good way to think about teaching and learning anyway.
Thank you, Gwyneth.
Thank you. So there's a question about housing. Will students continue to be housed on doubles and triples?
So early on, we were very concerned because there had been conversations at the state level that, that at colleges, universities, and boarding schools, students would have to live in single rooms. So that we got good news early on that front that that having roommate or roommates was fine, and they would actually constitute a pod, a family pod. The news got better on two fronts when the number of students who we could consider podded moved from 2 to up to 10 students on a hallway, which means that we will be able to subdivide our hallways in a way that students don't have to practice full social distancing, don't have to wear PPE when they're in the presence of one another. The other good news that we received was that while there were initially conversations about restricting the ratio of students per bathroom on dormitory hallways, the state elected not to put a specific ratio of students to bathrooms, but instead, said that as long as toilets and showers have dividers, and as long as you practice social distancing at the sink, so we may have to take a sink out of commission in each bathroom, there are no restrictions to that number as well. Now, certainly you're not going to have 9 people being in one bathroom at a time. We'll have limitations on numbers in a bathroom at any one time, but we will be allowed to have students in doubles, singles, doubles, and triples.
Great. And can you tell me a little bit about how the day student experience might change, if at all, this fall?
I don't, and Wes, I'll invite you in here again. I don't foresee any significant change happening with our day students. Our day students, provided that they are, they're being tested and provided that they're not presenting symptoms, it's our intention to have day students involved fully in the life of the school. We haven't made any decisions. I haven't even been in a conversation about where we would separate day students. I think there's conversations about day student space and how we may use that. But Wes, do you have anything that you would add to that?
We'll follow our capacity protocol. I mean, so in terms of, a lounge in a dorm, if it allows for 3 people and a day student's doing homework in there, they're one of the 3 people. We have students engaging in multiple classes throughout the day, activities, advisories. So to say that the day student population would be treated any differently, wouldn't be good. We still have the day rooms in the OSU, which are very much used by the day students, and we have the locker room, which is used often. I think ultimately the day students will have a very similar experience they've had in recent years, obviously with making sure they're reporting any sickness while at home and making sure they're not coming in if they're not feeling well. Again, back to the temperature checks, we're trying to figure out if that's, a good marker, since a lot of asymptomatic students may not present a temperature check. So, but I do think it's the responsibility of the student and parent to make sure they're watching out for symptoms and remaining home when needed.
Great. I think Tim already talked about this in his intro. Is there anything else that you or anybody wants to add to the interscholastic sports? Obviously, we're hoping that they will take place, but if not, will there be alternatives?
So again, we're waiting for further guidance, right? The state is allowing certain sports to be played at this point. You can play tennis, you can play golf, you can run cross country. Where there isn't clarity is around close contact sports, football, soccer, volleyball, field hockey, ice hockey, basketball. These are all very much up in the air at this point. What we do know is what I can tell you is that if we don't have the capacity because we're not given permission by the state or by some health agency to engage in these activities, then we will offer opportunities for students, particularly students who have a sport-specific interest, a particular passion, that we will make sure that they're given the opportunity, to the extent that we can, to pursue opportunities to enhance their profile in that particular sport. That may be challenging. I think that there's a big question about participating in off-season sports, hockey or soccer or lacrosse leagues that happen outside of school in the fall, which are very, very popular with our students. Those I think, are still a little bit up in the air whether they will be happening. And B, we still have to make a decision about whether to allow students to participate in those. I know that one of our peer boarding schools has told their hockey players that they may not participate in shoulder season teams, or whatever they're called, off-season teams, fall hockey leagues. At least one school has said you can't do that. Pomfret has not made a decision on that front yet. So we're waiting for more input. We're waiting for more guidance. Right now, we're being told that it's really the judgment of individual schools. But that also opens up a whole host of difficult conversations if one school's medical personnel decide that sports aren't safe and they're in a league and they're beholden to other teams to make that league happen. If their medical personnel say no and other schools' medical personnel say yes, it becomes more complicated. So we continue to press, particularly the Connecticut Association of Independent Schools for an answer. We are using them as leverage with state health authorities to get more clarity around close contact sports. We know in the state of Connecticut, for example, that Little League baseball is back and functioning, but that's baseball, and baseball it's fairly easy to socially distance in baseball. There's very little close contact in baseball. There's a great deal of close contact in football, soccer, hockey, lacrosse, basketball, and those remain, even at the professional level, those remain, I think, very much up in the air, despite what you're reading.
Yes, I mean, these are such difficult questions, and there is no answers. We're just asking you to look into your crystal ball, and so thanks for doing the best that you can answering these questions.
The plan right now is to run our sports until we're told that we can't.
Right. We'll hope for the best. We already talked about visitation on campus, but there is one specific question that parents are wondering if there is any chance that they're not allowed to accompany their children when they bring their children to school and to set up their rooms. And
we know that a good number, in fact, a vast majority of our students don't have licenses, and they're not allowed to have cars on campus. So parents, you're going to have to come. At least one of you is going to have to come to help set up, unpack a car, do the drive. We will have we'll have protocols set up well in advance. We haven't decided. We're discussing whether we may give students an opportunity to bring belongings before the move-in dates. We haven't made that decision yet. We will probably bring students back in waves, but what those waves look like haven't yet been determined, whether it's by form or whether it's by activity. Do we bring student leaders back first? So we still have to work out those details, but parents, rest assured, you will be allowed to come and drop your children off either in August or September.
Great. Moving on to distance learning, I'm going to kind of put two questions together because they seem to go well together. How will you ensure a high quality distance learning experience if my student cannot return to campus right away? And if a student starts a distance learning in the distance learning mode, but subsequent conditions permit him or her to return to campus, can they just choose to get to campus again? And does the school allow such a choice?
So I'm going to answer the second question first, and then I'm going to punt to Gwyneth. So if a student cannot start the school year on campus, they start in distance learning mode, we of course will welcome them back to campus when the conditions allow. We're looking at what that approach might look like. It's likely that we would create specific points of re-entry rather than having students sort of return on a everyday basis. But we would provide multiple points of re-entry if a student were not able to start either for health reasons or for travel restriction reasons. We would provide multiple points of re-entry once those conditions have been or those restrictions have been alleviated. So, and then I'll go to Gwyneth for an answer on the quality of the online experience.
Sure. We learned so much from the spring. We learned what really worked well for kids, and we learned what they missed. And so part of this idea of Agile course design and building in that flexibility has to do with making sure that kids are getting what they need and that we're tailoring it as specifically as we can to the kids and their situation. So for instance, I think teachers are going to have to be nimble enough to reorganize certain aspects of their curriculum. Things that require more sort of student agency and self-scheduling and things like that are really well suited to the distance learning environment. So if we know that a student will be away for the first part of the term, but is likely to return later, we may be able to reorganize the curriculum so that they're doing the things that are best for distance learning while they're in that mode. And then we can save the pieces that are more conducive to in-person instruction for when they're back. I'm going to encourage every teacher to have a quarantine project in their back pocket for a kid who might test positive, maybe stay here on campus, but not be in the classroom for 2 weeks or more. And so I think what we learned is that the adaptability to match the method to the purpose is going to be really essential. Kids really learned a lot about themselves as learners, which was great, but they also really missed their teachers. And so it's going to be so important for them to have those synchronous check-in opportunities, the meaningful contact with their classmates. And so we're gonna be adaptable and ready to design what's right for the kids that are learning at a distance for the duration of the time that they're not here on campus or not able to be in the classroom.
I just want to say that as a parent of 2 children who participated in the distance learning, obviously, they missed being at school tremendously, but it was a very positive experience, and we were very impressed the way how Pomfret just jumped in and was able to do this distance learning in such a short period of time. And the school really also showed how quickly they were able to adjust, if they said like, oh, we thought that something was going to work this way, but now we, get feedback, and like next week, the school tried something different. So it was really, it was a great experience. And as a parent, it was kind of interesting to see the schoolwork close by. It was more than just, asking, what did you do? We actually experienced it. Mm-hmm. Let's move on. There is a couple of questions about tuition and refunds. Will I receive a refund if my student cannot return to campus this fall? And will there be any adjustments to school fees this year?
Okay, and I'm gonna invite Ed Griffin, our CFO, to come on to explain the refund policy. We did explain that in the roadmap to reopening that was sent out on Saturday. But I'm going to ask Ed to go over exactly how refunds will work, who might qualify for a refund, and maybe quickly, Ed, touch on insurance and how that may relate to COVID-related expenses.
Sure. Thank you, Tim. So as Tim mentioned in the Pomfret Reopen document, we referenced that there's going to be a 15% discount or refund off of your net tuition for those students who are unable to participate in the face-to-face distance learning. So there's really two groups of people that we thought would fit in that category. One would be international students who are unable to attend because of some governmental restriction with travel. And the second would be students who are immunocompromised and there's some existing health condition that medical doctors have decided that it actually is unsafe for that student to take some risk and participate in that face-to-face environment. So that might be applicable to some of the domestic students. Tim and I thought it would be important to be as upfront with that refund as soon as practical. And so we made that announcement in advance of June 30th. We're a bit in the minority. Not many schools have made commitments to that extent. They are basically holding off, but we really wanted you to be informed with respect to the financial circumstances. Not that I expect anyone to feel sorry for us, but we're basically trying to operate a school in a traditional sense. We're also creating a hybrid solution for those who are going to be unable to be here. And in addition to all of that, we have additional responsibilities, mostly from a health and safety perspective. So we're putting resources into making sure that we have an appropriate amount of PPE on campus, cleaning protocols, our dining program, signage, contact tracing, making sure that we've staffed up so that the health services are there to be ready to go. Testing, we talked a little bit about testing. Just so our parents know, the group that we're partnering with from a testing perspective, it is our intent for those tests to first be billed to our insurance companies, the insurance companies of each and every student, which is a requirement of attendance at Pomfret School. But again, if for whatever reason the insurance is not accepting of that, which they should, Pomfret School is taking on the financial responsibility of testing after that first disclaimer. For those who purchase health insurance through Pomfret School, it provides full coverage for any kind of COVID type treatment. And for those who don't and have their own insurance, obviously that'll be between you and your insurance company. Was there something else, Tim, that I was supposed to mention?
That's it.
Yeah, that's great.
There was a question about the enrollment contract. The deadline is coming up. Is there any possibility of postponing the deadline to withdraw, maybe to a later date?
Our plan right now is to stick to our deadline. We need to have as clear a sense as possible for budgetary reasons to know what our student population will look like come the end of August. If there are unusual or exceptional circumstances that really would require you to hold off on making a decision, I would invite you, and Ed knows this is coming, to communicate that directly with Ed. As the CFO, he manages all of the finances, including tuition. His office does. But if you don't have that exception, we are asking families to commit to the date that has been on the calendar. We're asking for the payment to be in by the end of July, if I'm right, Ed.
It'll be billed on July 1st, due at the end of month, at the end of July is the first tuition payment.
Again, we are happy to speak individually with families, but we're not going to move our deadline.
Okay, great.
We're not gonna move our deadline broadly for everyone. If there are individual families who have special circumstances, we welcome those conversations.
Right. Can you share student commitment numbers? Have we seen a drop off in Pomfret students for the upcoming year or?
So as of right now, and Amy Graham, you're on the line, you could probably give more updated statistics. My understanding is that as of yesterday, we were at 350 students who were intending on being with us. But Amy, could you take a crack at that question? And we have not seen any significant initial, what we're calling melt as a function of this. A couple of students, mostly international students, or maybe 2 international students have made a decision that they may not start with us, but very, very little movement so far. But Amy, I'll toss that to you.
Absolutely. No, our families are committed, both are new and returning. We're excited to welcome 350 students to the upcoming school year. You know, as Tim mentioned, we understand that there's a level of uncertainty, and we're grateful for the partnership and understanding. And please, as questions come up, reach out to us. I think the Reopening Pomfret document gives a wonderful blueprint of where we are right now, and we'll continue to keep families updated so that they can make informed decisions about the fall throughout the summer.
Thanks, Amy.
Great. Well, I think that is all the time that we have today. Unfortunately, we didn't really even have a chance to go to many of the live questions and answers, but I'm sure that if you anybody out there, if you have more questions, just feel free to contact the school, and they will be happy to answer any of your remaining questions. I want to say thank you, Tim, and everybody else, Brenda and Amy and Ed, who answered and these questions. And you know, I hope everybody's going to stay healthy and safe, and join us again when we will have our next Tim Talk. I'm sure there will be one probably next month.
We will absolutely continue to keep you informed. Marita, I want to thank you. I want to thank my admin team for sitting in the background and giving what I think were really thoughtful and detailed answers to many complicated and complex questions. As I said, we've answered many questions, but as you know, there are many questions that remain to be answered. The commitment on the school's part right now is unwavering. Our anticipation and expectation is to be open and running an on-campus school, which is, I say with a big smile on my face as I walked around an empty campus this morning. Looking forward very much to having you all back, doing everything we can to ensure that we maximize our opportunities to keep your children safe, but also to share with them the extraordinary experience that you know, returning parents, that you know Pomfret provides, and for you new parents that you saw when you engaged with us during the admission process. We are really excited. We're a little bit nervous, but that's just being honest. These are uncharted waters for us all. But with the team we have assembled here, and the faculty we have, and the staff we have, we are incredibly confident and very hopeful that as strange as it may look and feel at the beginning of the school year, that Pomfret will be back and showing its true and glorious colors come August and September. So I want to thank you for your time. I know we've run over just a little bit, but we appreciate your support and your commitment to the school, and we're excited to welcome you back. And please, as Marita said, please stay tuned for more updates throughout the summer. I appreciate your time.